When are we gonna see women in the UFC, man?
Ronda Rousey's legacy is a complex tapestry woven from moments of triumph, controversy, and reinvention. Once heralded as a transcendent figure in women's sports, her rise, peak, and eventual downfall created a narrative unlike any other in mixed martial arts. Her journey from an Olympic judo medalist to becoming the first female UFC champion showcased her tenacity and raw skill. She didn't just break barriers, she obliterated them. Yet, with every rise comes a fall, and Rousey's story became as much about her vulnerabilities as her victories. Born with a fighting spirit, Rousey overcame early personal tragedies, including the devastating loss of her father, to channel her grief and determination into becoming a world-class athlete. Her accomplishments in judo were impressive, but it wasn't until she transitioned into MMA that her star truly began to ascend. Inspired by trailblazers like Gina Carano, Ronda's fiery ambition and elite grappling skills led to a meteoric rise in the Strikeforce promotion, where she began her legendary streak of first-round armbar victories. When the UFC finally opened its doors to female fighters, it was clear that Rousey was the catalyst. Her dominance as the inaugural UFC Women's Bantamweight champion elevated her status to that of a cultural icon. She didn't just win, she annihilated her opponents, often finishing them within seconds. Her charisma, confidence, and unapologetic attitude drew comparisons to Mike Tyson, with many believing she was unbeatable. However, this dominance came at a cost. Rousey's overwhelming confidence often teetered on arrogance, alienating some fans and fighters alike. Her stint as a coach on Baitula and in The Ultimate Fighter highlighted this divide. While her unapologetic nature resonated with her core fans, it painted her as a polarizing figure to many MMA purists. Her eventual downfall began with the devastating knockout loss to Holm, which exposed the vulnerabilities in her striking game. It was a humbling moment for Rousey and a turning point in her career. The subsequent loss to Amanda Nunes further solidified the decline of her MMA dominance. Critics questioned whether Ronda had relied too heavily on her grappling without evolving her overall skill set. Yet, Rousey's story didn't end in defeat. She pivoted, leveraging her fame to carve out a new career in professional wrestling and entertainment. Her resilience, both inside and outside the octagon, remains a testament to her indomitable spirit. In hindsight, Ronda Rousey's legacy isn't just about her victories or defeats. It's about the cultural impact she had on MMA, women's sports, and beyond. She inspired a generation of female athletes and proved that women could headline pay-per-view events and draw massive crowds. While her reign as the baddest woman on the planet may have been fleeting, her influence on the sport of MMA and her role as a trailblazer for women cannot be overstated. The legacy of Ronda Rousey has always been a fascinating topic in MMA. The judoka Olympian turned fighter fell in love with striking, a shift largely influenced by the people around her, including Joe Rogan and Dana White. Comments like, "Your striking has accelerated to someone who looks like a Holm world champion kickboxer," contributed to the narrative that she was evolving into a complete fighter. However, despite this hype, many could see that her striking remained awkward and inconsistent. While her longtime coach, Edmond Tarverdian, had improved her abilities, her overconfidence in striking distracted her from the judo base that brought her success. As Ronda rose in popularity, her dominance in MMA was unparalleled. She assembled a team of female fighters known as the Four Horsewomen of MMA. Among her fiercest rivals was Bethe Correia, a Brazilian fighter who had been defeating Ronda's teammates one by one. The rivalry turned personal after Bethe made comments mocking a tragic event in Ronda's family. This led to one of the most intense pre-fight build-ups in the history of women's MMA. When the two finally met in the octagon, Ronda decimated Beth in 34 seconds, silencing her opponent with a brutal knockout. Her dominance extended beyond MMA, She became a cultural icon, appearing in Hollywood movies, on magazine covers, and in countless interviews. By 2015, she was the face of women's MMA, helping to elevate the sport into the mainstream, alongside stars like Conor McGregor. However, the turning point in Ronda's career came when she faced Holm. Known as a decorated boxer, Holm presented a challenge that Ronda hadn't encountered before. Despite taking the fight seriously, Ronda's over-reliance on her striking proved fatal. Holm outclassed her and delivered a head kick knockout that shocked the world. For the first time in her career, Ronda tasted defeat, and the aftermath was crushing. She withdrew from the public eye, avoiding press conferences and social media. Months later, Ronda appeared on The Ellen DeGeneres Show to address the loss, revealing she had contemplated ending her life. While this interview drew sympathy, her refusal to credit Holm and her claims of still being undefeated alienated fans. Her silence and apparent disregard for the fans, who supported her, further strained her relationship with the MMA community. Ronda returned to the octagon at UFC 207 to face Amanda Nunes, who had become the bantamweight champion. However, the fight ended in disaster. Nunes overwhelmed Ronda with strikes, finishing her in just 48 seconds. This marked the end of Ronda's MMA career. She retired without addressing the loss or acknowledging the growing pool of talent that had caught up to her. Despite her MMA exit, Ronda transitioned to WWE, where she found success but again alienated fans with her attitude. Her reluctance to engage with the media and her tendency to make excuses for her losses further tarnished her legacy. Stories of her arrogance began to surface, painting her as someone unwilling to accept criticism. Still, Ronda's impact on MMA cannot be understated. She was a pioneer for women in the sport, bringing unprecedented attention to female fighters and proving they could be pay-per-view stars. Her dominance inspired a new generation of athletes, and without her, stars like Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shevchenko might not have had the platforms they enjoy today. In retrospect, Ronda's downfall wasn't just about losing fights. It was her inability to handle defeat with grace and her strained relationship with fans that defined her post-MMA career. But her contributions to the sport remain undeniable. She broke barriers, shattered stereotypes, and showed the world what women in MMA could achieve. Her legacy is complicated, but unforgettable. For 5 years, Ronda Rousey was the face of women's MMA, proving that women belonged on the main stage of combat sports. The path she carved will continue to inspire generations of fighters to come. To fully understand Ronda Rousey's legacy, we must acknowledge the pivotal moments that marked her journey. From her meteoric rise to her eventual departure from MMA, her career, though polarizing in its latter stages, was undeniably transformative, shaping not only the UFC but also women's combat sports as a whole. The rise of the first female UFC star before Rousey, women in MMA were an afterthought. Dana White, the president of the UFC, famously stated that women would never fight in the UFC. Yet Ronda's dominance in Strikeforce and her Olympic pedigree in judo forced him to reconsider. White saw her potential as a marketable athlete who could sell fights and bring in an entirely new audience. When she became the UFC's inaugural women's bantamweight champion, she was thrust into the spotlight, carrying the responsibility of proving that women's MMA could be a legitimate draw. Ronda didn't just meet expectations, she shattered them. Her fights were electric, often ending in seconds with her signature armbar submission. She wasn't just winning fights, she was winning over fans, skeptics, and media outlets. Rousey's presence in the octagon was something special, a rare combination of athleticism, charisma, and ruthless efficiency. Her confidence bordered on arrogance, but it was captivating. Fans loved her, and those who didn't tune in just to see her lose. Either way, people watched. The UFC recognized this and positioned her as a centerpiece, headlining pay-per-view events and drawing attention to women's MMA in ways no one thought possible. The cultural phenomenon. Ronda's appeal wasn't limited to fight fans. She became a mainstream celebrity, appearing on the cover of Sports Illustrated, hosting Saturday Night Live, and securing roles in blockbuster films like Furious 7 and The Expendables 3. She was everywhere, becoming a symbol of female empowerment and athletic excellence. Ronda's brash persona played a key role in this rise. She confidently stated that she could defeat male fighters like Floyd Mayweather, sparking debates that transcended the sport. Her confidence wasn't just promotional. It was a declaration that women could command the same respect and attention as men in the world of combat sports. She inspired countless young women to take up martial arts, breaking down societal barriers and redefining perceptions of what women could achieve in male-dominated fields. Her fame and impact were undeniable, but the pressure to maintain her dominance grew with each fight. The beginning of the end. Holm's head kick knockout of Ronda Rousey in 2015 was more than just an upset. It was a seismic shift in the landscape of MMA. For years, Ronda's invincibility had been a cornerstone of her appeal. Watching her dismantle opponents so effortlessly made her losses all the more shocking. The fight with Holm revealed flaws in her striking game and shattered the illusion of invulnerability that had surrounded her. The loss was devastating, not just physically, but mentally. Ronda's confidence, once unshakable, seemed irreparably damaged. Her decision to avoid the media in the aftermath only fueled speculation about her mental state. While some sympathized with her struggles, others criticized her inability to gracefully handle defeat. When Ronda finally returned to face Amanda Nunes at UFC 207, the cracks in her armor were glaring. Nunes dismantled her in just 48 seconds, exposing the limitations of her game plan and her inability to adapt to the evolution of MMA. With back-to-back losses, Ronda's time at the top was over. She quietly exited the sport, leaving behind a complicated legacy. Transition to WWE. Ronda's move to WWE marked a new chapter in her career. While some saw it as a step down from MMA, it was an opportunity for her to reinvent herself. Wrestling allowed her to blend her athleticism with her natural charisma, and she quickly became a star in the promotion. Though her time in WWE was met with mixed reactions, it solidified her status as a versatile entertainer. However, her abrasive attitude toward fans and fellow wrestlers sometimes overshadowed her contributions. Ronda's insistence on controlling her narrative often alienated those who once supported her, a recurring theme in her post-MMA career. The duality of Ronda Rousey's legacy. Ronda Rousey's story is one of triumph and tragedy, of unprecedented success followed by an equally dramatic fall from grace. Her impact on MMA is undeniable. Without her, the UFC might never have embraced women's divisions, and the sport might not have reached its current level of mainstream acceptance. Her achievements in the octagon remain unparalleled. She was the first woman to headline a UFC pay-per-view, the first female fighter to break into mainstream pop culture, and the catalyst for a wave of female talent that followed. Fighters like Amanda Nunes, Valentina Shevchenko, and Rose Namajunas owe a debt of gratitude to Ronda for paving the way. Yet, her reluctance to acknowledge her defeats and her perceived arrogance have tainted her legacy in the eyes of some fans. While other fighters have gracefully transitioned into retirement or found ways to remain connected to the sport, Ronda's abrupt departure and combative attitude have left her at odds with the MMA community. What we can learn from Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey's career is a testament to the highs and lows of being an elite athlete. Her story reminds us that success can be fleeting, and that the way we handle adversity defines us as much as our triumphs. While her post-MMA career has been polarizing, it doesn't diminish the fact that she changed the sport forever. For fans, Ronda's rise was a thrilling journey. For fighters, her legacy serves as both an inspiration and a cautionary tale. She showed the world what women in MMA were capable of, but her inability to adapt and grow ultimately led to her downfall. In the end, Ronda Rousey will be remembered as a trailblazer, a fighter who brought women's MMA to the forefront and inspired countless others to follow in her footsteps. Her legacy, though complicated, is one of undeniable impact. Whether loved or hated, Ronda Rousey will forever be a part of MMA history.